Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Oh, Tony, we are one day away from the first game of the 2024 Ohio State football season. It feels like we've been talking about this and thinking about this and podcasting about this
Mhm.
forever. So it is great that it is finally here because it feels like it might be a halfway decent one.
Well, and yes, especially this week. Nothing like Akron week. We've been talking about it forever. The buildup has been insane. The players at this point are tired of talking about Akron. They just want to play. Like, we've been asking about Akron. What do you think about their offense? What do you think about their defense? What scares you about this Akron team? And so I think now they just want to play the game instead of just continuously talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, the students spending all week crossing out all the A's and all the signs around campus. It is a tradition unlike every other. Every year we talk about it. We look forward all year to Akron Week, and now it's finally here. I'm so excited.
So excited. So let's talk a little bit about this game. I will tell you, Tom, this Akron team, like a lot of lower level MAC schools, it is loaded with players from Power Five schools. So I'm just gonna read some school names and give you an idea of what Akron is bringing to Columbus. So North Carolina State, Michigan State, Minnesota, Arizona State, Miami of Florida, Maryland, Alabama, Cincinnati, and in Washington State, South Carolina.
Hmm.
Like, so these are, they have some legitimate recruits. They have players who were once legitimate recruits, did not work out for wherever they were, or we've seen it at Ohio State. You're at a place that's too high for you, so you drop down. But also doesn't mean you're guaranteed to be doing anything at the next level, at the lower level as well. But it is just interesting to see a roster that I'm sure there are guys here that had offers from all over in the Big Ten and throughout the SEC. So that just gives you an idea that there is potential for plays here and there. It's just the consistency and the depth that is always going to be the issue.
Well, and there's going to be plays here and there, but one of the places you're really going to see it, I think, on Saturday is on the offensive line, where just the trenches on the whole on both sides of the ball. That's generally a spot where if you can play, there is a tremendous amount of demand for you to move up. And you're seeing this a lot with a lot of MAC schools right now. Ohio University, I know, had lost a huge chunk of their team to, Nathan Rourke, for
Mhm.
example, transferred from Ohio University up to Indiana. You see a lot of guys where the MAC level schools can't bid with the Big Ten level schools, so you lose a lot of your better players. And then you do end up, the portal does go both ways. And sometimes that turns out to be a Sam Wiglusz, who is a walk on at Ohio State and then a superstar at Ohio University. But a lot of times it is a net negative to those MAC programs. And I think you're going to see that in the trenches a lot on Saturday, where I think Ohio State's going to generate a pretty good pass rush and be able to generate a pretty good push in the run game. And that can lead to a very long afternoon for an opponent.
It's interesting you say that because I was just scanning the defensive line for Akron, and like the two main transfer schools listed are New Mexico State and New Hampshire. To give you an idea that
Mm-hmm.
it is just difficult to bring in defensive linemen from wherever. And you say the same thing about offensive linemen to a certain degree. At least the elite offensive linemen are very, very expensive. So they're not going to show up at Akron, and they're not probably going to stay at Akron. So it's always a difficult proposition to keep those players there. So let's discuss this because, as we know, this is about Ohio State. It's not about Akron. It's as Ryan Day says, it's about us. So that's kind of where I want to start with what is a good day for Will Howard in his Ohio State debut? Because when I asked Ryan Day, like, what would it look like for you to know that, okay, this was what we wanted from Will Howard? And he's basically just said, I want it to be clean. I want, you know, no turnovers, and just be ahead of the chains, be confident in the huddle, have the team just leading the offense and staying on schedule. So what statistically does that look like for you?
something in the neighborhood of 70-ish% completion, 75% completion. I know you picked 80%
Mhm.
on our bold prediction show yesterday. That would be a very good day if he ends up in that range. But if he's anywhere in the range of 70% completions, maybe 200 total yards in the first half, and no turnovers, that's probably a perfectly fine day. I know 200 total yards does not sound like a ton. They're going to be running the ball with the running backs. They're going
Mhm.
to, and he's going to only probably play roughly a half, give or take. He doesn't need to have 400 yards total offense in the first half. It does not need to look like CJ Stroud against Michigan State in 2021. It just has to be efficient. It has to be just ruthlessly efficient to the point that it's almost boring, that it's just, oh, look, Ohio
Mhm.
State scores another touchdown. You know how by the time like they score the fifth touchdown of the first half, it's no longer like this roar from the crowd.
Mhm.
It's kind of a little closer to spring game, like, oh, well done. Yes, good. Well struck. Yes. You want kind of the just sort of boringly efficient first half, I think, from Will Howard. And yeah, I think those numbers are probably somewhere in the neighborhood.
He completed over 70% of his passes in just one game last year, but that was 15 of 17 against Houston. So it is there. I would throw in there like stay out of third and long, which generally means no sacks on first or second down. Um, Escape when you need to. I don't expect them to use him much in the running game. They shouldn't need to in terms of just but also some of this is going to be his call and what the defense does. So I do wonder how often are they going to call a specific run option for him. We know there are going to be plenty of run pass options for him. But if you call a run option for him and it's just him reading the defensive end, there are going to be times where he's carrying the ball. And I don't know that they want to do that right now. We know they will eventually. I don't think there's any reason to do that, but I do expect him to scramble here and there. So, I wouldn't be, 3 or 4 rushes, something of that nature, not including sacks, just because that's what he's going to do. And I know Ryan Day has told him if you got receivers on one-on-one coverage, that means they're open. So go ahead and throw it. I am interested to see how aggressive he is and how confident he is in that. And we know he's been practicing them now with 40 total practices by the time he actually takes the field with them in a game. So that kind of rapport has been built up. But I'm interested to see how effective he is at that, how confident he is in that, and how often that it is just, you know what, Carnell's over there. I'm going to throw it. I know, it's it's open if it's one-on-one coverage, but you've got 3 starting receivers where they don't need to be open, need to get open to be open, but also they're going to be more open than they've been that more open than Will Howard has ever seen them as well.
Right. He spent the last 40 practices watching them going up against Denzel Burke and Davis Igbinosun and Jordan Hancock and Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom, and none of those guys are walking through that door for Akron anytime between now and 3:30 on Saturday. So you can certainly say, well, you need to put a safety over the top. Okay, that's fine. How many safeties do you have? And are you aware that the other team can run the ball? So you can't just have 3 safeties lined up 40 yards across the field on, in the middle of the field and on the numbers. That doesn't work. So you're going to have to pick your poison if you're Akron. And that means that someone is going to be singled. You can't have everyone doubled, the 3 wide receivers doubled, and then also not give up 19 yards a carry to the running backs and also not give up 400 yards to the tight end. So you're going to have to sort of pick your poison. It's interesting you were talking about throwing downfield more. I think that is going to be an interesting factor here, because if he's just checking down and just playing it safe, that may be part of the game plan, that they
Mhm.
just, take it easy and just don't do anything stupid and just, be efficient and keep the chains moving. That's where you get to 70%. If he's throwing the ball downfield and he's at 65% or 63% or something like that, but he's taking shots downfield and they're not going to connect on 100% of them. But if you're taking shots downfield and you're at 63, 65%, that's a perfectly fine day too. You're probably going to see at least some of that. I don't know. Maybe they just go bombs away and just try and really light things up for week 1. I just feel like this might be a little bit more of a measured approach, and you're just sort of stretching, you're just kind of getting limbered up, and just let's stretch out the running backs a little bit. All right, let's stretch out the tight ends a little bit. Let's run some shallow stuff. Let's keep things efficient. Let's stay on schedule. All the real boring, college football coach stuff that they always talk about wanting to see. You might see some of that, but I'm sure they will give the fans something to get out of their seats and cheer about, and they'll take a shot or two downfield too.
And if they don't, then that's the Drew Aller approach. Don't be crazy with the football. Don't throw it downfield, but you've got the receivers to do it here at Ohio State. One of my bold predictions that I didn't use that I would just remembered that I should have is that I think I think there's a possibility that Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson both start this game just because, where they're both very, very talented, and it's just something to throw out there. I do expect Travion Henderson to start because he's a captain and he always starts. So I do expect him out there, but it is going to be interesting to see how different Carlos Lachlan is compared to Tony Alford and how the carries are distributed. Where I think Tony Alford was pretty much you get a series, you get a series, you get a series. You just alternate the series. Um, how how much do you think? Do you think it's going to be the same, or because I think you might see more in-game stuff, especially if they're going to be huddling and sending in stuff.
I think the pace of the game is probably going to impact that a decent amount. Where, like you said, if you're huddling between plays, and that is very likely going to sort of be, it seems like that was sort of the norm for just about everyone during week 0. I'm expecting that to sort of be the norm for Ohio State, at least a decent amount of time. They may go up tempo at times. I don't think they're necessarily going to be showing that or burning that against Akron, but you're going to be huddling more, which means you're going to be subbing more, and you're not in a situation where you're going to be trapping people in a personnel grouping that is disadvantageous to them. So if you're on offense and you've got your, you go to a 4 wide receiver package and the other team is in a 4-3 defense and you're running up tempo, they can't necessarily sub those guys out. And so then you have this real great
Right.
matchup advantage. That's not, if you're huddling every play, that sort of stops being a thing that's as much of a recurring theme during the course of the game. So I do think you're going to see a little bit more free substitution at a lot of positions, not just running back.
Yeah. I then with the free substitution, let's talk about the offensive line because Ryan Day said they're going to be moving guys through. I think we might see an offensive line on Saturday that is not the same offensive line we see in 4 games in terms of maybe some early season injuries and some things like that. So I am interested to see if this is not the de facto offensive line. How free are they with putting guys in different spots or playing 7 guys in the first half, something like that? Or, do they want to stick with the 5 guys that they roll out there until it's time to, until it's, 28 nothing, or you've established this offense and now you can do some things. Because when Ryan Day says we're going to roll guys out there, that has many different connotations depending on the tone of the words that he's saying, depending on the position that is being talked about. Like when you say we're going to roll guys in there on the defensive line, you know exactly what that means. When you say we're going to roll guys in there through there on the offensive line, you're like, at what point? Yeah, at what point does the rolling begin? And I think it could be in the first half, but things have to go well. I don't think they're going to do it just to do it unless something is going poorly.
You could see that. I'm not expecting that many things to go poorly, especially along the lines for Ohio State. If they do, that would be a little bit of an eyebrow raiser for me. It was interesting the way Ryan Day talked about injuries on Wednesday night. Basically, say TC Caffey's the only long-term injury. It's like, okay, well, what about the short-term injury? Well, you know, I think they're going to play it rather cautiously, and
Hmm.
there's no reason. If someone's a little dinged up and another week off might give them a little bit of an advantage to just sort of heal up, you lose basically nothing by swapping in one of you guys that you feel pretty good about for another. So I'm definitely with you on I'm not expecting I'm expecting to see different versions of the offensive line, shall we say, in the first half than what we might see against Oregon or even against Michigan State later in the month.
and then we will have the availability report put out, 2 hours before kickoff, and we'll have that for everybody on the live show at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle Saturday afternoon around 1:30 o'clock, based on based on the way the clock works there. So defensively for Ohio State, I will remind people, Akron's starting quarterback is Ben Finley, who was a starter has played at both NC State and Cal. So, he's been around, he's seen some things. He is going to be experienced, but also he was never super consistent at his previous stop. So there's no reason to think he's going to be consistent at this stop. It's just there is the potential there for some nice throws here and there. But like we talked about early in the show, it's always about consistency and just the repetitive consistency of doing it and doing it well. And that's probably, I would imagine you're not going to see that from Ben Finley on Saturday, because the Ohio State defense is going to be raring to go. And what starts up front, like, he is going to be, he's going to be running for his life, quote unquote. But it is always interesting to see how quickly the ball comes out against Ohio State's defensive line. Like, they don't want him standing back there. They're always throwing quick stuff and things like that, but also quick stuff against corners that are going to be this aggressive could lead to some tackles for loss for Denzel Burke and Davis Igbinosun. Frankly, like, this season they could be having 7-8 tackles for loss over the course of a season. So I think they're going to throw it quickly, but I don't think it's going to go all that well for the Akron passing game. Must credit Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Huddle.
It feels like this is almost the inverse of what we talked about with the Ohio State offense and the Akron secondary trying to defend them. The Ohio State offensive line should be able to give Will Howard time, which should allow him to throw the ball downfield. And then if Akron has to really play conservatively to not get torched by some of the Ohio State wide receivers, boy, that's going to open up a lot of stuff underneath. It's kind of the reverse for the Akron offense, where you probably don't trust the offensive line to protect for long. So you're trying to get the ball out quickly, which means you can't run deep routes, which means the corners can really play press man, really sit right up on that line of scrimmage, try and take that away, be physical at the line, knock them off their timing a little bit. All of that just feels like, boy, I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball well. And that feels like you're not going to have a lot of time to throw. And if Ohio State corners are going to play physically, and we know they love to play physically, then it just feels like, where exactly is the offense coming from here? They're going to get a first down. Akron is going to get a first down at some point. Should have saved that one for the bold prediction show we did. Too bad. But Akron will get a first down at some point. It will be okay. Akron may string together multiple first downs in a drive at some point. That also will be okay. This is not anything you need to panic. And we have seen teams come in and have the first drive that's scripted and very creative, and they can move the ball and everyone freaks out. And then it was 5-0 Miami at one point in that game in 2019. And then it ended up 76-5. Like, it's not worth freaking out over if the opponent gets a first down or two. I don't really see where the offense is going to come from. Tony, I was just looking through the notes. Do you know who Akron's wide receiver coach is? Let me just answer that for you. Why would you? And the answer is, good question. It's J.D. Brookhart, who actually is a former Akron head coach. He led the Zips to the MAC championship in 2003.
Sheesh.
Was the Akron coach for a lot of the 2000s. And then, according to his Wikipedia page, has been out of coaching for about 12 years and now is back as the wide receivers coach for Akron. So if you are an old school MAC head, that will be a familiar face.
Dynamite drop in, Monty. The offense, I'm not expecting much from, and I'm just looking back at, this is a different team than they were last year, but they were held under 100 yards rushing, Akron, in their last 6 games of the season. Their best offensive performance last year, 263 yards rushing, by far their best, against Indiana. Like, no wonder Tom Allen was fired, and one of their best passing performance against Indiana. So, but they still lost the game 29-27. So I think the running game is going to be very stifled, and the passing game, you're talking about the best secondary in America. with Ohio State. So overall, there's not a lot of there. But I do like Joe Moorhead, the head coach, who's one of the, he's fantastic offensive coordinator at Penn State years ago, gave Ohio State fits, but he had better talent there, obviously. But I do think he can draw some things up, not quite to the level of Greg Schiano special teams, but I do think you're going to see they're going to try something. But again, this isn't something Akron is trying to win, whereas Greg Schiano is kind of trying to win with everything he's doing. I think Akron knows better. I know Akron knows better, but also Joe Moorhead he's a creative guy. He's got some skills as a play caller and a coordinator and things like that. So maybe there's certainly some reason for respect, no reason for fear. I am not expecting much in the way of anything from Akron offensively. Like what is an acceptable defensive performance? Total yards we know is kind of a crock, but say in the first half for Ohio State's defense, because I would say under 100 yards personally.
100 is exactly the number I had in my mind. And if you're going to look at it, I always feel like it's smarter to look at it on a yards per play
Yeah.
basis. And if you're looking at it on a yards per play basis, I pulled this up for the bold prediction show we did yesterday. The last 3 times they have played this kind of caliber of low-ish level MAC team, 3.1 yards per play against Akron in 2021, 2.1 yards per play against Miami in 2019, 3.4 yards per play against Bowling Green in 2016. Those were 2016 to 2019 were pretty good Ohio State defenses that are probably similar to this one. 2021, that Akron team was real not good. So I think if you're in the 3 yards per play realm, somewhere around there, and if it's 3.5, that's probably fine. But if you see, as long as they're in that 3-ish yards per play realm allowed, especially in the first half, that's probably a perfectly fine performance.
I will say Akron was held under 3.7 yards per play 5 times last year.
Is that good?
That is not good, Tom. That is very,
Oh,
very bad. So, and you should feel bad, frankly.
I am now I'm looking through the last time section, the last time it happened section on the Akron game notes. Tony, do you know the last quarterback to throw for more than 300 yards against an Akron defense was?
Well, let me see. The last team they played was Ohio. So Curtis Rourke.
Well, they have these done in a very stupid way. So this is not a factual thing, even though it says it is. This says it's Kyle McCord in 2021, but Curtis Rourke did throw for 400. The last quarterback to throw for 300 yards passing was Kyle McCord in 2021. The last quarterback to throw for 400 yards passing, which I believe involves going past 300 yards, was Curtis Rourke of Ohio in 2022. So maybe, Tony, you should be putting together the Akron game notes.
No, thank you. I am fine where I am at. I will say last thing, special teams, 2 things. Nick McClarty making his Ohio State debut, perhaps. Well, he will be holding. We know he'll be holding. If Ohio State punts, he will be punting. So I think we're all looking forward to that. Akron's punter, listed here in Phil Steele's magazine, John McConnell. So, Columbus Blue Jackets owner, John McConnell.
Akron may have problems on special teams and with hockey, apparently.
Too soon, Tom. Too soon. Anything else before we go? Oh, yes. Score predictions. I sent mine in. Have you come up with your score prediction? And we can begin by seeing how close we are. I don't want to give you mine if you have not come up with yours yet.
I have not come up with mine, although my son was asking me what I thought was going to happen, and I gave him a score. I think I said 56-3,
Okay.
and somewhere in that range. I'm tempted to dial the Ohio State one back slightly just because we saw all 4 of the week 0 games go have the underdog cover, and a lot of them I think went under, just with we have not completely adjusted yet to the slower pace of play and all that kind of stuff. That may shorten drives, but boy, I think Akron might have some real short drives, and Ohio State might have some real good field position. So I'll stick with 56-3, but only because you never predict a shutout.
Okay. Yeah. I went 52-7. So we all had the same number of scores, just one score on each side ending up differently. So there you go. While you're here, go ahead and please hit the thumbs up on this YouTube if you're watching it on YouTube. And of course, if you're listening on any podcast platform of choice, we would appreciate a 5-star rating and review. We do always thank you for that. That will do it. There is your score prediction. I do think Ohio State will win. I know. Crazy. Of course, we were going to have plenty of post-game coverage starting even before the Ohio State game is over. Go ahead and switch over to us at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, and then we'll have you covered from the end of the game to the post-game interviews with Ryan Day and Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles and assorted players, probably Will Howard there as well. Then, of course, Tom and I will be back with the post-game instant reaction Buckeye Weekly episode for you. So a long, nice stretch of Ohio State Akron recapping for you after the game. You can find that at BuckeyeHuddle.com, also youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. And also, go ahead and join us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. We would appreciate seeing you there. It is now this season. No reason not to be there with us. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.